Star Trek finally has a heroic version of Khan after 58 years. For nearly 6 decades, Star Trek has wrestled with one of its greatest creations, Khan Noonien Singh. Introduced in the original series' 1967 episode, Space Seed, Khan embodied everything compelling and dangerous about genetic perfection. He was brilliant, charismatic, and ruthless, a human who saw himself as a god. When Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan premiered in 1982, Ricardo Montalban's unforgettable performance solidified Khan as perhaps the franchise's most iconic villain. Yet for all his power and intelligence, Khan was never truly a hero. He represented the dark reflection of humanity's ambition, what happens when we take evolution into our own hands. But now, 58 years later, Star Trek has finally done something remarkable. It's created a heroic version of Khan. Through the character of Lon Noonien Singh on Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, the franchise has found a way to redeem Khan's legacy, not by rewriting history, but by exploring what it means to live in his shadow. Lon isn't just a relative of Khan. She's a living metaphor for humanity's ongoing struggle to reconcile progress, compassion, and the consequences of its past. The shadow of genetic perfection. Khan has always loomed large in Star Trek's mythology. As a product of the eugenics wars, he represented one of humanity's darkest chapters, a time when science, unrestrained by ethics, created a race of genetically engineered superhumans. Khan and his followers believed themselves superior, seizing control of much of Earth before being exiled into space. His eventual resurrection in the original series, and later vengeance in Wrath of Khan, reinforced Gene Roddenberry's warning. The quest for perfection often leads to tyranny. Lon Noonien Singh, introduced in Strange New Worlds, carries that legacy not as a weapon, but as a burden. She's a descendant of Khan, a fact that defines her entire life and career in Starfleet. From the moment she joined the Enterprise, Lon has been forced to live with the knowledge that her name is synonymous with one of humanity's greatest monsters. To some, it's an unerasable stain. To others, a curiosity. To Lon, it's a daily reminder that no matter how much she does for Starfleet, she'll always be judged for something she never chose. This guilt and stigma gives Strange New Worlds one of its most emotionally resonant arcs. Where Khan saw genetic superiority as a justification for domination, Lon sees her heritage as something to overcome, proof that greatness without compassion leads nowhere. Turning a name into redemption. From her very first appearance, Lon stood apart from her crewmates. She's reserved, guarded, and occasionally harsh. But beneath that exterior lies a profound empathy born of trauma. She doesn't boast about her lineage, she hides it. She doesn't seek power, she protects others from it. In every sense, she's the anti-Khan. The brilliance of Strange New Worlds is that it doesn't turn Lon into a sanitized hero or deny the complexity of her ancestry. Instead, it forces her to confront it head-on. In the Season 2 episode Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, Lon is sent back in time and meets a younger version of Khan, a child who hasn't yet become the tyrant history remembers. For the first time, she's face to face with the person whose existence has defined hers. That encounter becomes one of the most powerful scenes in modern Star Trek. Lon doesn't kill him, even knowing what he'll become. She sees the innocence in him, the potential for goodness that was later corrupted by the circumstances of his creation. In sparing him, Lon chooses compassion over vengeance, humanity over fear. It's the moment she redefines the Noonien Singh name, proving that heritage doesn't determine morality. This single act reframes Star Trek's long-standing relationship with Khan. The franchise, once content to paint him as the cautionary tale of human arrogance, now acknowledges that redemption, however distant, can exist even within the shadow of genetic sin. The evolution of Star Trek's moral vision. Lon's existence marks a major evolution in Star Trek's storytelling philosophy. In the 1960s, when Khan first appeared, the show was still exploring morality in clear black and white terms. Humanity had to overcome its past by rejecting figures like Khan, relics of violent ambition. But the Star Trek of the 2020s operates in a more morally nuanced universe. It asks what happens after humanity overcomes its darkness. How do we coexist with the remnants of our own mistakes? That's where Lon comes in. She isn't a genetically engineered being herself, but she's tied to that legacy. Her presence on the bridge of the Enterprise, working alongside Captain Pike, Spock, and Uhura, is a quiet testament to how far humanity has come. Starfleet doesn't punish her for her ancestry, it judges her by her actions. That subtle message reflects how Star Trek continues to evolve with the times. It no longer fears scientific ambition, but insists on coupling it with empathy and responsibility. Where Khan represented unchecked human evolution, Lon represents ethical progress. She's proof that humanity can face its worst impulses without being consumed by them. In that sense, she's the franchise's ultimate redemption story, not just for her family name, but for the very concept of human improvement. The humanity Khan never had. What made Ricardo Montalban's Khan so captivating wasn't just his intellect or his physical prowess, it was his pride. He saw himself as the pinnacle of human evolution, yet his fatal flaw was his inability to love unconditionally. His rage and wrath of Khan stemmed from betrayal and loss, but it twisted into obsession and vengeance. He believed himself superior, but he was ruled by his emotions. Lon, on the other hand, embraces vulnerability as strength. She grieves, she loves, and she questions herself constantly. Her interactions with Spock and Pike reveal a woman trying to balance duty with self-forgiveness. She's what Khan might have been if he'd valued empathy over domination, if he'd seen power as a means of protecting rather than conquering. Even her relationship with time traveler James Kirk in Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow shows that compassion can exist within tragedy. She experiences love briefly and loses it just as quickly, but she doesn't let that loss harden her. It softens her edges, teaching her that connection is the true measure of strength. Lon's emotional depth contrasts so sharply with Khan's unyielding arrogance that it's almost poetic. For 58 years, Star Trek's greatest villain has finally found balance through his descendant, the legacy of the Noonien Singh line. By turning the Noonien Singh name into a symbol of heroism rather than terror, Strange New Worlds accomplishes something that earlier Star Trek series couldn't. It doesn't retcon Khan's villainy or attempt to absolve him. It recontextualizes him as part of a larger human journey. The eugenics wars weren't just a cautionary tale. They were the growing pains of a civilization learning how to wield knowledge responsibly. Lon's story suggests that humanity's sins don't vanish with time, they're inherited, faced, and ultimately transcended. Every time she steps onto the bridge, she represents that ongoing struggle between fear and hope, perfection and compassion. And perhaps that's what makes her the true heroic Khan. Not because she's stronger, faster, or smarter, but because she chooses to be human. Why it took so long? It's fitting that it took nearly 6 decades for Star Trek to find this balance. The franchise has always mirrored the anxieties and ideals of its time. In the Cold War era, Khan represented the dangers of authoritarianism and scientific hubris. In the 1980s, he embodied vengeance and the cost of obsession. But today's world is more reflective, more interested in empathy, accountability, and the question of whether we can redeem the past without erasing it.